Mr. Margolis, I would like to know what made an experienced and well-known journalist like you become a writer.
Well, I've always loved writing. I've loved history. I've loved foreign affairs. I like expressing myself. But most important, I almost became a history professor, and I love to teach. I love to teach people things that they don't know, and so I use writing as a way of trying to explain my understanding of the world, what I've seen, what I've experienced. And in my latest book, for example, it's an effort to explain to North Americans what the rest of the world is really like.
Talking about your second book, I was stunned by your deep knowledge and sharp analysis, your courage to present new facts and criticize the American foreign policies, especially in the Muslim world. But particularly I admire your style. You're very direct, concise, ironic, and colorful. Is there any Albanian dimensions here inherited by your mother, Nejmia Zaimi?
Oh, I think so. The former Turkish ambassador here in Canada once came to me. He'd never met me, and he said, "May I ask a personal question?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Do you have any Albanian blood?" I said, "Why?" I said, "What makes you ask that?" He said, "Well, the way you write," he said, "you punch people right in the face." He said, "Right between the eyes. You're very hard when you..." And I laughed, and I said, "Yes, my mother was an Albanian, and she was notorious for that. She was the world's most undiplomatic person. She would tell people exactly what she thought, including me. And that's the Albanian way, and I've inherited that."
Why this title, American Raj? What is the symbolism?
It refers to the British Empire in India, which was known as the British Raj. Raj means rule, empire. We have the Indian word Raja from it too. And it refers to the way the British managed to rule all of India, which in the 19th century had no more than 250 million people, and only 100,000 British managed to control this huge area. How did they do it? Well, they did it by the divide and rule, by using local rulers to do their job, by bribing, by occasional military force. And when I looked at this, I said, this is the way that America is now ruling much of the Muslim world, through subsidiary rulers who do America's bidding. They exploit the Muslim world in much the same way as the British did in India. I mean, there are important differences, one of them being that Britain left India with a very important legacy for democratic procedures and the English language. The United States so far has not much left any kind of legacy to the Muslim world.
So, Mr. Margolis, why did America ended up then being hated among Muslim countries?
Well, America was loved among the Muslim countries, and when I was traveling as a young man in the Mideast, everyone loved America. During the days of President Eisenhower, that's in the late 1950s, America was adored across the Muslim world as a liberator and a symbol for democracy and for honesty and for all the things that they were aspiring for. Well, my mother went to the Middle East, and first journalist really to find about the Palestinian refugees, and she wrote a paper for the U.S. State Department in the early 1950s, 53, called Gauge of Arab Anger, and Gauge of Arab Anger, and she warned, she said that unless something is done with the Palestinian problem, that the entire Muslim world is going to turn against the United States. It's 1953 she wrote that. It's happened, and the reasons, as I try and explain in my book, is because of Palestine, primarily questions, because the Muslim world intensely feels and sees now on television every night the agony and the suffering of the Palestinian people. They have seen the agonies in Bosnia and in Kosovo, with the terrible atrocities inflicted on the Muslims there, the genocide in Chechnya, where half the population has been killed. They see every night events in Iraq and now Afghanistan, and of course the Muslim world blames this on the United States, and every month anger grows and grows.
Talking about a relationship between America and Muslim countries, although both secular societies, Albania and Kosovo, are generally perceived as Muslim countries. When George Bush visited Tirana last June, Many Canadians were left scratching their heads while watching such a controversial president being treated like a hero in Albania. What was behind George Bush's warm reception?
Well, he needed to go somewhere where he would be treated by a hero, and Albanians are famous for being remembering favors, kindnesses that have been done to them, as well as injustices, and for rewarding them. And let's remember, America was always the defender of Albanian liberty and democracy and independence. From 1912 onwards, and particularly after World War I, and when Bishop Fanoli went to Boston, and I mean, America was the second home of the Albanians, and so there's this great residual love of the United States, as it should be. As a half American, I'm very proud to see this. I wish the rest of the Muslim world felt this way, but it's because of the good things that America has done for Albania, and of course helping save Albania from genocide at the hands of the Serbs.
In your book, you also offer a series of recommendations on how to improve relations with the Arab and Muslim world. You suggest, for example, that America should stop supporting puppet despotic regimes and try to encourage the establishment of new democratic forces within those societies. But if America follows this path, it could mean the end of cheap oil era. Do you agree with that?
Well, there may be a short-term influence on this, particularly for Saudi oil. But, if you're going to check the price, add up the price of oil, you have to add to the cheaper oil that we're getting from these American implanted governments who sell oil cheap, cheaper than it should be, the cost of the arms and the cost of the military that America needs, and the cost of the Iraq war, and all these expenditures. America spends billions and billions and billions of dollars keeping military forces in the Middle East. So this is not a savings. It's actually, it's a tremendous waste of money.
Talking about functioning new democratic regimes that you would like to see in those countries, how hard is it to preserve some sort of sovereignty for small countries like Kosovo and Albania, whose creation and existence are linked to the United States political and military intervention?
Well, unfortunately, these small countries are often used by the United States for its own purposes, and I would include Albania in this. It's done some things that are not right, like arresting Muslims who had come to fight in Bosnia and handing them over to the U.S. But I think if the U.S. lowers its worldwide, global sort of imperial posture and goes back more to what it was before the days of Bush, that there won't be as much pressure on these small countries. And of course, because when America is not fighting a war against somebody, it doesn't need these small countries as much. So that's the downside.
There is a picture in the book showing you with the former Albanian President Berisha, who now is Prime Minister of the country. How were you introduced to him back then, and how was the reception?
I really don't remember how I was introduced. I arrived in Albania, and they heard I was there, and they said, you have to come to the presidential palace, and he knew me. He knew my mother quite well, and I think he had met her, and I think I'd met him too when he had come to the United States. My memory's not so good, but that's how it happened.
On page 17, you present your 3 reasons for writing, and let me mention them to you. First, to educate your fellow North American readers. Second, to battle all types of propaganda, disinformation, and lies. And third, to speak for those who have no voice. But all these 3 undertakings of yours could lead to one conclusion. Americans live in an ignorant and propaganda society which helps directly or indirectly oppress Muslims around the globe. What do you make of that?
Well, it's unfortunate. It's tragic. I hate to see the United States, which I love and admire, become an oppressor of Muslim people. It is absolutely, it's a very, very bad trend for the United States. I hope it's going to change. I don't think it is very much. But I see the United States now reminds me very much of the Soviet Union in the late 1980s when I was there, where all the news was propaganda, and all the people in the news business censored themselves. They knew what they could say, what they couldn't say. Everything was agitation and propaganda. And unfortunately, America has this in a much more subtle form. It's not as obvious as in the Soviet Union, but it's just as much there. And I just came back from Europe. When you go to Europe, people have a much better understanding of what's happening in the Muslim world because their media is much more open and much more honest with them. In the United States, it is not.
Coming from an East European background, I myself find your analysis very critical on the imperialist nature of the American society. To an average American, you might sound a little bit like a leftist. On the other hand, you are a successful American businessman. But when proposing radical changes in the American foreign policy, making the U.S., let's say, less imperialistic, how do you reconcile in you the businessman and the free thinker?
Well, the businessman works hard, or has worked hard for many years to allow me to go and travel to different parts of the world and to speak freely, because I'm not afraid of losing my job. And I won't be pressured by anybody, nor will I be bribed by anybody. So this gives me a great inner strength. But I've had so much pressure on me in the media, and I've been banned from different media for speaking what I think is the truth. It's been a very difficult process, and the same thing happened to my mother when she dared speak about the plight of the Palestinians, and our lives were threatened. People were going to throw acid in my face as a child. We live with this kind of threat and pressure. I'm going through it right now over things I've written about Gaza, but my Albanian blood won't let me back down. I'll fight anybody who comes, and that's my mission. I know it's a hopeless cause, but at least I will have tried to tell the truth as I see it, and to speak for all those people who have no voices.
Let me ask another question. How was the book received generally, and where was it best received? In the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, or else?
Interestingly enough, we've got some of the strongest interest in France. I just got back from Paris, and the French media are very, very interested in it. We've gotten strong reception in the U.S. and Canada. I've gotten some criticism from neoconservative, extreme right-wingers, some very bitter conservative. But in general, it's interesting. Most people said, gee, I never knew this. And that's exactly what I wanted to do with the book. I have readers who write in and say, I had no idea this was going on. Nobody ever told me this. So I'm very happy with having done that. And also back to your, I didn't answer your last question completely too, about ideology. I'm a businessman and fairly conservative economically. And but I never let ideology influence my view of the world. And left-wingers call me a right-winger, right-wingers call me a left-winger. It's stupid to use ideology to try and analyze the world. I'm a pragmatist, and I just do it based on experience.
Are you happy with how the sale of the book is going? I saw your book on a very good display in a library here in downtown Toronto.
No, I'm not happy because no books sell enough. And unfortunately, 70% of all books that are sold in North America are bought by women, and there's usually self-help books about diet and beauty and children and pets and this kind of thing. There's unfortunately a fairly limited market for books on politics, foreign affairs. There's very little interest in foreign affairs in North America, particularly in the United States. Much better level here. I'm happy that I've gotten so much feedback from intelligent people and experts on the subject who are telling me that they've learned a great deal from it. As I said, that was really my objective.
I'm sure The American Raj is not your last book. Any new project in the process?
I have some projects in the works. I have another book, about 3 chapters of which has been written, called working title Holding Hands with Gaddafi, and it's about my adventures in the third world. It's much lighter hearted, sort of look back at some of the more amusing and interesting anecdotes I've had. I may work on some documentary projects that I'm thinking about. I also want to take a rest too. Writing a book is exhausting. Then going out and promoting it, and I've just finished this, is 5 times as much work.
Who is helping you in the writing process?
Me. I do all the writing, and we have a proofreader who comes and checks and always misses things because you get emails from around the world. I just got one from Pakistan saying I'd misspelled something. No, you have to do all the work. I do all the work myself. I do all the research for myself. It's a big job, but what's even worse is editing the book once you've written it. And you have to go back. I must have read this book 15 times. And it's a huge amount of work.
Let me ask you my final question. I saw the Albanian flag and the Skanderbeg statue over there. Where do they come from? Because they look a little bit special, like the Ahmet Zog's flag, I would say.
Oh no! Some Albanians came to me and they gave me this statue. I think it was Fred Pristina who gave it to me, and I keep it there, not because I'm an Albanian nationalist. I'm a Canadian and an American. I have great sympathy for Albania, but my first loyalty belongs here in North America. But because Skanderbeg inspires me to be strong and to fight against any kind of odds and never to give up.
I wish you good luck and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.